Have you ever dreamed of attending a real royal ball? Once Bridgerton came out, everyone suddenly wanted to immerse themselves in high society, just like in the days of Queen Charlotte. But what if I told you that stepping into a real 19th century ball and surviving it was far from a fairy tale? In this video, we'll take a closer look at what it really took to impress the Queen, what your wardrobe had to include, and all the strict rules of etiquette you had to follow. Get ready, the most exciting journey through time of your life starts now. Welcome back to Female Tales. I'm Yulia, and together on this channel, we explore the stories of remarkable women from history. If history speaks to you, like the video, join our community, and let's head straight into the depths of the past. So, here we are on May 19th, 1800, the birthday of Queen Charlotte. And today, in her honour, she's hosting a lavish ball. The tradition of holding this ball actually dates back to 1780, when it was first organised for her by her husband, King George III. But the event became such a hit with high society that it quickly turned into a tradition and was then held every single year for almost 200 years. Thanks to the series Bridgerton, many people have come to believe that this ball was nothing more than a playground for marriage games among London's elite. But in reality, its main purpose was charity. During these balls, Queen Charlotte raised money for a hospital she personally supported, a hospital that, by the way, still bears her name today. And today, you will actually get the chance to step into one of her balls, as a debutante. But before that, let's make sure you are fully prepared. First of all, please check whether you have a card to the ball. Your family would have had to apply in advance to the Lord Chamberlain of the royal household, the man responsible for all ceremonial matters at court. And it was he who made the final decision, based on how suitable you were and how worthy your family was of attending. Before you could even step into the ballroom, you had to make your debut in society. This happened through a formal presentation to the Queen, an official ceremony held in her drawing room several times a week throughout the social season. To qualify, you had to be a young woman under the age of 20, never married before, and, of course, your family had to belong to the nobility and aristocracy. If you were approved, you received 2 cards in return. One, granting you the right to approach the Queen and perform a curtsy, and the second, your official invitation to the ball itself. Now, over time, the circle of those allowed to debut before the Queen began to expand. By the reign of Queen Victoria, the Queen Charlotte's Ball, now firmly established as a tradition, started welcoming girls from more modest backgrounds. However, these were still families connected to what were considered aristocratic professions, the daughters of officers, doctors, or religious figures. It was believed that this allowed the simpler classes to be brought closer to the Queen. At the same time, the doors remained firmly closed to the daughters of merchants and businessmen. These professions were simply deemed unworthy. Eventually, places at the ball even began to be bought. The wealthiest American heiresses of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were desperate to be presented at the British court, and were more than willing to pay a small fortune for the privilege. By the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the number of so-called random girls at the ball had grown so large that Princess Margaret once famously said, "We had to put a stop to it. Every tart in London was getting in," and in 1976, the tradition of the ball was officially brought to an end. You couldn't attend the presentation to the Queen or the ball itself on your own. You absolutely had to have a companion. She needed to be a woman of noble status who had already been presented to the Queen herself. Most often this role was taken on by the senior woman in the family, your mother, your grandmother, or another distinguished female relative. Sometimes, noble women from impoverished families would actually sell their services in this role, acting as professional intermediaries. Now, if you have your precious cards and a proper companion by your side, it's time to check your readiness. Are you truly prepared for such an important day? Let's start with your manners. Queen Charlotte was famously very conservative. She adored tradition, and even the smallest mistake would certainly not work in your favour in her eyes. Several months before the London season, many future debutantes took special lessons, what we would today call finishing school. There, they were taught how to properly enter and leave a room, how to carry themselves gracefully in society, how to sit and walk with elegance, and how to maintain light, effortless conversation. Special attention was given to behaviour around members of the royal family. For example, how to approach the Queen and perform a flawless curtsy. So, let's practice one more time, right now. Here's the secret to the perfect curtsy. Your left knee should be positioned behind the right one. Lower yourself slowly, facing forward, and absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. So, how did you do? If you managed it, congratulations. You are guaranteed to become the star of the season. Now, let's see whether your wardrobe is actually ready for such a grand appearance. Because the ball was only the beginning of the season, and after that, you were expected to survive an endless parade of social outings, tea parties, receptions, horse races, and each of them required a proper outfit. For the entire season, a young lady needed dresses for walks, morning dresses, evening gowns, riding habits, shoes, boots, ankle boots, gloves, stockings, undergarments, caps, shawls, parasols, fans, domino cloaks, countless pieces of jewellery, and all of it had to be made to match or form a perfectly coordinated ensemble. Naturally, preparing such a wardrobe would cost your family a small fortune. Dresses were usually commissioned from the finest dressmakers or purchased at the most fashionable shops in London. A single court gown could cost anywhere from £200 to £500 sterling. In the Regency era, £1 was worth 240 pence, or 20 shillings, and sometimes even more. So, just imagine what the final cost of an entire wardrobe might look like. Every detail of the look was planned in advance. Newspapers of the time eagerly dissected who arrived at the ball in which dress and in which carriage. For the families of debutantes, it was a matter of honour to demonstrate impeccable taste and undeniable luxury. So, what exactly was in fashion during the Regency era? Dresses of the time were defined by a high, raised waistline and a narrow, flowing skirt that fell to the ankles. During the daytime, ladies were not allowed to bare their chest or arms, which meant long sleeves and bodices covered with a blouse or chemise. Evenings, however, allowed for a bit more freedom. Short sleeves and deep décolletage were permitted, although ladies were still expected to wear white or light-coloured gloves, reaching up to the elbow, made of leather or cotton. Gowns were crafted from luxurious fabrics such as satin and decorated with delicate, intricate embroidery. Typically, a dress was worn only once, although some were cleverly designed so they could be altered and worn again. And now, where is your most important debutante outfit, the one you will wear today? It was a long, white gown with a 10-foot train, a headpiece adorned with 3 ostrich feathers, and white gloves reaching to the elbows. So, are you ready for the most important appearance of your life? And now, you are already inside St. James's Palace. But ahead of you lies not triumph, but long hours of waiting on your feet. The reason was simple. You were not allowed to sit in the presence of the Queen. Instead, you might be forced to stand for hours, waiting for the Chamberlain to finally call your name. When your name was announced, you were to step forward to where the Queen was seated and perform the curtsy we practiced earlier today. The Queen would then, out of courtesy, ask you a few questions. And once she made it clear that you were dismissed, you were required to perform another curtsy and slowly move backward. No one was permitted to turn their back on the Queen. And remember, you are wearing a very long train. Under no circumstances should you trip over it. Now, was it true that the Queen awarded her favourites the title of Diamond of the First Water? No, that is nothing more than an invention of the series. However, it is true that every season had its most dazzling young women who drew the intense attention of the entire court and the press. Of course, there was no Lady Whistledown, but there were ever-present newspaper reporters. The thing is, this period coincided with the invention of a new printing technology. Steam-powered rotary printing presses. Printing suddenly became faster, cheaper, and far more accessible. The general public had a particular fondness for illustrations and caricatures of the nobility. Names were rarely printed in full. Usually only initials were used. But combined with countless hints, that was more than enough for readers to guess exactly who was being discussed. And now, at last, the long-awaited ball. And I sincerely hope you're wearing comfortable shoes, because balls at that time were marathon events. Dancing began late in the evening, around 9 or 10 p.m, and continued all the way until dawn. sometimes until 5 or even 7 in the morning. Personally, I would already be fast asleep on a sofa by midnight. But you, pull yourself together, because this was the perfect place to find yourself a noble husband. Yes, I did say that the original purpose of the ball was charity. But let's be honest, it was also an excellent opportunity for young, unmarried people to pair up, which is why, more often than not, it was seen as a marriage market for brides and grooms. Finding a suitable husband or wife depended on many factors. Marriage offered a chance to climb the social ladder and strengthen family ties, which is why marrying someone of a lower social standing was generally discouraged. Despite the intense pressure to choose a partner based on wealth and social standing, love was not entirely off the table. If a couple desperately wished to be together but lacked parental approval, there was always one solution: to run away to Scotland, where marriage laws were far less strict. And if you've already spotted a handsome gentleman standing somewhere in the corner of the ballroom and you feel ready to flirt, allow me to remind you of a few very important rules so that tomorrow your name is not whispered on every street corner in London's drawing rooms. When it came to introductions, gentlemen were presented to ladies, never the other way around. A gentleman could not approach a lady without a formal introduction. And once the object of your interest was finally presented to you, keep this in mind: no liberties of any kind were allowed. You were not permitted to address your protégé by his first name. Only his title was acceptable. First names were reserved exclusively for family members. The most important rule of etiquette stated that a lady must never be alone with a gentleman unless he was her relative or her husband, as this could easily provoke gossip. Now, if the gentleman you fancy has invited you to dance, be sure to record this in your dance card. These cards helped noble ladies keep track of the dances they had promised to perform with various partners and potential suitors throughout the evening. However, be careful not to dance with the same man more than twice, or, heaven forbid, all night long. That would almost certainly spark rumours about the nature of your relationship and put your reputation at risk. The most difficult and most important dance of the ball was the minuet. It was performed in front of the Queen by specially selected debutantes. This is what the minuet choreography looked like. And honestly, it resembles a pirate treasure map more than a dance diagram. And if, by chance, there wasn't a single handsome gentleman at this particular ball, don't despair. You are not destined to become a spinster. This is only the beginning of the season. So, do you still want to make your way to Queen Charlotte's court and attend one of her legendary balls? If everything I've told you hasn't frightened you, and your heart is still racing at the thought, then I have good news. Queen Charlotte's ball was revived at the beginning of the 21st century. Of course, it is no longer hosted by a reigning monarch. It's now a private project. But even so, you still have the chance to wear that famous white gown and perform a curtsy. So tell me, would you like to attend Queen Charlotte's ball or its modern-day version? Write in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.